Now to an urgent story about the rising threat of political violence. Just yesterday, we heard testimony on Capitol Hill from an official who received death threats against his children from angry Trump supporters. Today also marks 5 years since a gunman opened fire on members of Congress and staff on a baseball field. Republican Congressman Steve Scalise was seriously wounded. CBS News has learned Capitol Hill police investigated nearly 10,000 threats in just the past year. Scott McFarland shows us how America's increasingly toxic politics are also becoming more dangerous.
A college graduate with a public health degree, Sid Mather of Maryland had no political or criminal history until he broke the law by committing a felony with his cell phone.
At that moment, I let my anger get the best of me.
Weeks after the 2020 election, Mather called his congressman and left a voicemail saying he knew where the congressman and his family lived and that he would blow up his office. Prosecutors deemed it a death threat that warranted swift and serious consequences. Mather says he was angry his congressman was challenging the results of the election.
You say your intention was to voice your opinion. You went a lot farther than that.
I did. In fact, like when I picked up the phone, and I was so infuriated at that time. It was an unfortunate thing that I did, and I'm very sorry.
Mather is now serving a sentence of home detention after pleading guilty to a federal criminal charge of communicating a threat. This man, with zero history of political activism or protest, is part of a fast-growing wave of threats under investigation by federal authorities that has only increased since the January 6th attack on the Capitol. U.S. Capitol Police report a spike in threats against members of Congress. In 2021, investigations of threats were up 11% from the previous year, when there were nearly 9,600 of them. That's more than double the number from 5 years ago.
Lucky to be alive. I know God definitely took care of me that day.
Some threats have already resulted in violence. A gunman opened fire and severely wounded Republican House Whip Steve Scalise at a baseball practice in Virginia in 2017 before Capitol Police returned fire and killed the shooter. Scalise, who's been undergoing physical therapy for years, says there should be a zero-tolerance policy and rigorous prosecution for threats, including the verbal ones.
Clearly people, and there's got to be mental illness involved in it, the rage that some people might get where they think it's okay to take a political difference and want to then go and commit violence based on it.
And just last week, a man was arrested for threatening to kill a Supreme Court justice. The man was found near Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Maryland home with a gun and a knife and is charged with attempted murder.
Threats of violence and actual violence against the justices, of course, strike at the heart of our democracy.
Put your mask on!
The Southern Poverty Law Center, an advocacy organization, says the increasingly overheated and inflammatory rhetoric of politicians is fueling a combustible, toxic environment.
The gentleman is not in order.
You believe elected officials could do more to denounce this?
Yeah. There's no question that hearing from elected officials that this is unacceptable behavior, that there are consequences for embracing this kind of hate speech and extremist ideology, that makes a difference, just as the failure to do that makes a difference.
Though it's not only politicians who bear responsibility, according to Sid Mather, who knows people must resist going too far, like he did.
I still think about it every day, like when I wake up or when I'm going to sleep. It's going to stay with me forever, basically, just for that one mistake, for that one night.
The U.S. House Sergeant at Arms has recommended more security cameras and more security upgrades in the hometown offices of members of Congress when they're not here at the Capitol. And Capitol Police tell CBS News they're trying to hire and deploy 280 more officers by the end of the summer. Gayle?
Very scary times. Scott, thank you very much.